All right. So while it's Mother's Day, I don't have like a mom-themed sermon. Sometimes you go to churches and it's like a whole service is set up and the preaching is about moms. And we're just going to work through the text today. But the one, I guess, kind of, if I were to twist it a little bit, is every book in Genesis, every sermon is going to be about a family. So while I'm not preaching about mothers, I'm preaching about family because Genesis, the second 4/5 is just a study of one man and his family. And so today, we're going to be studying the great-grandson of Abraham, which is Joseph. And if there's one thing we see clear in Genesis, and we see clear in our lives, is that being a family is complicated and messy. No matter who you are, what family you come from, it's a little bit hectic, a little bit crazy. Right? Family often makes up our closest friends, like the people that we're inseparable with, but it's often the people that hurt us the most too. Like think about in your life, just full transparency. Who was the person you were meanest to this week? I bet it's probably someone in your family. It was your kids, your spouse, or a friend that you view as family. I'd say that's probably true, right? When it comes to strangers or even, surface level friends, there's this like common courtesy that exists, right? So you typically have pretty good relationships with those people, or you put on this best version of yourself in order to impress them. But with family, that all just goes out the window. You don't have to pretend anymore. They all know who you are, so you just don't even cover it up. You just, whatever you got is what you pour out, right? That's what we do with family, right? There's some beauty in that there's this transparency you can have, but often we take that too far and we use what hurts them against them in order to cause them damage, right? That happens in families a lot. That's the point, right? If you were to read Genesis, what you see is less like a highlight reel of saints, which is often what we're almost told in Sunday school as we grow up. The Old Testament is about these people you should be like and aspire to. But it's less like that and more like keeping up with the Kardashians or some crazy like television show where it's just the most nonsensical stuff going on. They're hurting each other in ways, and it's pretty crazy, right? Every book from 11 on, and even before then, it's just family drama after family drama after family drama, right? You've got lies and deception between spouses, between brothers, murder, infidelity, and rape, right? It's less like a highlight reel and more like a tragedy, right? So what I want to show today is the story of Joseph is going to start the exact same way. A family that is broken because of the context that had been surrounding, and a God who binds himself to broken people, even in their messiness. So I want to jump straight into it today. I'm going to read the first section, the first 4 verses of Genesis 37, and it's going to set up the scene. And we'll have to do a little bit of work to understand what's going on, but let's start there. Chapter 37, verse 1. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojourning in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to their father. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a robe of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peacefully to him. Right? There's only 4 verses here, but there's years and years and years of sin that have led up to what's going to happen next. Right? And even the wording that Moses, the writer of Genesis, decides to use here sets that scene up for us. Right? Think about it. There's never typically in a family or in any situation that you have, there's almost just this one issue that you can put a finger on. Think about the person in your life you probably have the most complicated relationship with. You can never almost just say, well, this is the problem. It's gotten to the point where it's just there's a million things and they're all smashed together, right? For example, if you had a clear bottle of water and you took some blue food dye and you put a little bit of blue food dye in to represent that argument you had. And you take a little bit of red food dye and put it in order to represent that one thing they said to your family member that you love. And then you have a little bit of black food dye, and you put it in there for that unmet expectation. And then you take another little bit, and so on and so forth, and as you shake it up, at the end, you've got messy brown water. It's complicated. There's no way to separate it. What's done is done. You can't really fix it at this point. It's just messy. Right? And that's the situation that we walk into here in Genesis. I can't put a finger on and say, this is the reason the brothers do what they do. There's some ideas, but there's this whole culture of their home that has been built that has led up to this moment. Right? Let's start out. Who is the father, the patriarch, the leader of this family? Jacob. Right? And Jacob's life has been defined by anything but holiness. Right? We see it from the day he's born. When Jacob is born, the way he got his name, Jacob, which means heel or deceiver, is he's being born at the same time as his brother Esau. And as he comes out, Jacob grabs a hold of his ankle, showing that I'm going to do whatever it takes to get ahead of you. Right? That's who he is. He's a deceiver. That's his sinful nature, is just to try to put himself first and be the primary one. Right? And then we see that again. He fools his brother out of the birthright with some lentil soup. You guys probably know the story. And then he fools his father by putting on his brother's clothes. His father was going to try to go around and give his brother a blessing anyway. And him and his mom and Jacob and his mom conspire and he puts on his brother's clothes and he talks like him, trying to be burly, and puts some animal fur on his skin to be hairy like his brother, and he tricks him. Right? He wears his brother's clothes and tricks him out of the blessing. Right? Then his brother wants to kill him, so he leaves. And he meets God in the wilderness. And I think at that moment he believes in the promise that God gives him, that it'll be through him that the Savior will come. And even from that moment, from being saved per se, it's still a train wreck. He goes and he marries 2 women, which turns into 4 women, and he's sleeping with every single one of them, even though he really only loves one primarily. So think about this. This is the home that these boys are growing up in. This is the culture that's being built by their father. This is the context but they're coming out of, by which what happens next happens. Right? So you have these 4 wives. They're all kind of competing for who's the most important, who's loved the most. It's a real mess. Right? And he's a passive father. Right? If you remember, he has a daughter named Dinah. If you guys remember that story, Dinah is raped. And his brothers go and take care of the situation, kill a whole town, because what does their father do? Nothing. He doesn't say the word. The only thing he says is, how is this going to reflect on me? Right? We see over and over and over the failure of a father. Over and over and over again. Right? And then you have this weird thing that happens with Reuben, his other son. Reuben, the oldest, sleeps with Bilhah, one of his wives. It's like this power play in order to have, strength in the house, and so that sort of thing. And so what does he do there? Nothing. Again, he knows it happened. He just kind of lets it go out the window. He's just this passive father who has cultivated this competition-based childhood in the home, right? And it says that he makes him this coat of many collars. If you're like me, you think of like the Dolly Parton rags thing where she sewed a bunch of rags together, and it's, however the song goes, I don't even know. But that's probably not the best translation. Right? We have the Sunday school image of our heads of what coat of many collars means, but it's probably just this like expensive long sleeve tunic. And interesting enough, this actually isn't the only place in the Bible where that Hebrew word that's translated coat of many collars is used. I didn't realize this till this week. It's actually used somewhere else in 2 Samuel. If you remember the story there about a princess named Tamar. It's a really tragic story, if you do go look it up. But essentially, something terrible happens to her, the same thing that happened to Dinah. And as she's kind of regaining herself, she puts on this jacket, this coat of many collars, which is interesting. It's not even translated that in 2 Samuel. It's just translated long-sleeve tunic. So she puts this on, and it has this little section behind it that says, and this was the tunic that all the princesses, all the daughters of David wore to show that they were virgins and that they were of high value and they were of honor. So this, right? While it doesn't perfectly explain, it does help make the connection of how Jacob views Joseph, right? If he's this high honor, to be protected. He almost feminizes him a little bit. Right? It's like it's his daughter, right? To be protected and to be cared for. He's highly above all the others. And he does this with Benjamin too. And I don't know about you, but if you remember the two boys that slayed the whole city, which is Simeon and Levi, would you not be mad if you were them too? Think about it. He has a daughter who he didn't care about at all, just kind of pushed away, and now he's got this son just because of the wife that he comes from, which is Rachel, the wife he loved. That's where Joseph comes from. And I would be mad too. You didn't do anything, Dad, to protect our sister. You didn't care about her. And now look at you dressing up Joseph like a princess. It's goofy. Like, what is going on here? It doesn't make any sense. Right? And so that's the context we walk into here. And because of all of his brothers hate him. Right? They hate him because they want what he has, which is their father's love, their father's attention, and their father's honor. Right? They hate him so much that they can't even speak to him. They can't even look at him. I want you to check your heart in here today. Is there anybody that you hate in that manner? And really, they've done nothing to deserve it. They're just a result of what someone else has done. I'm sure that a lot of that. We have people that when you can't even speak to them. If you saw them in public, it's just like, it hurts to even think about who they are. Right? Check your hearts today, because a lot of times that's unfounded. It's based on some other circumstance. And sometimes it's completely founded. I'm not saying that it's okay to feel that way. We'll get into that at the end. But we harbor this hate just like that, just like the brothers do. So that's the context. We have these jealous brothers in this toxic home. That's a situation of this favorite playing passive father. Verse 5, now Joseph had a dream, and we had told it to his brothers. They hated him even more. He said to them, hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf rose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. His brothers said to him, are you indeed to reign over us? Are you indeed to rule over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his word. Right? Many people argue, right, that we see two accounts of Joseph being sinful in this whole story, the whole 13 chapters or whatever it is of Genesis. This is one of them. And it says that he's being arrogant and prideful. I don't know if that's true or whether it's sin or immaturity, but put yourself in the brother's shoes for a moment. This is aggravating. This is annoying. This is like, oh my gosh, man, are you serious? Dad just gave you this fancy little jacket. He's walking around looking like Jennifer Lopez or something in this fancy long coat. And now he's saying, now all of you are going to bow down to me. You'd be mad too. Like, come on, Joseph. Why are you being such a punk? It's like if he'd have been wise, he'd be like, my brothers hate me. Maybe I should just tell my dad about this dream, not tell them. So I can see where they've put together this story of, he wants them to know he's over them. I can see that. But this is how sin works. Look at this. Let's start in verse 4, then verse 5, then verse 8. It says, verse 4, they hated him. Then verse 5, it says, they hated him even more. And then verse 8, it says, they hated him even more. Right? That's what happens with sin. Is it starts out with this little tiny thing. It's just a bug in your ear. You don't deal with it, so it becomes something bigger. You don't deal with it, so it becomes something even bigger, right? It's like the snowball effect. It starts rolling down the hill, and before you know it, it's this big, giant iceberg that's going to smash you in the dirt, right? That's how sin works. Let's be on, like the sin of anger. It starts out, you're just a little bit frustrated with them, and then you get an argument, and it just blows out of proportion. Right, that's really the way typically, I'm not saying it's always this way, but it's typically the way that affairs happen. That it starts out, you just had a conversation with somebody. Thought they were attractive. And then you had a conversation with them, and you realize that you have some connection. And then, next thing you know it, You've been sleeping together for a couple years, and you just are callous to the situation that you're living two lives, right? It's like, how did this happen? Because that's how sin works. It whispers lies into our ears that we convince ourselves that what we're doing is okay for whatever reason. The brothers think they're justified in their anger toward their brother, and it almost seems like they are. A lot of people think they're justified to cheat on their spouses because their life home is complicated and messy, and so they make up this lie in their head. That's what Satan does. He whispers lies into our ears, right? He doesn't cause us to sin, but he brings out what's already there within us in order to believe the lies and act upon it. And that's what's happened in the lives of these brothers. They're just letting it build up and build up and build up until it gets to the point where it just gets out of hand and it's too far gone for them to fix it. And so, verse 9, it says, then he dreamed another dream. So it's not over. He does it again. And he told it to his brothers and said, behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. But when he told it to his fathers and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you? And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in his mind. Right, so the brothers are angry. Jacob's just kind of curious about the dream. Are you telling me that Jacob's completely blind to the fact that he does? Like, do you think he doesn't know how the brothers feel about Jacob? He knows. They're making it so clear. Just like he made it clear that he loved Jacob more than them, they're making it clear that they hate him. Jacob knows, but what does he do here? Nothing again. He doesn't say, boys, what is going on here? I know I've showed favoritism. There's no apology in him. It's just same old passive Jacob. He doesn't even say, Jacob, come on, man. You got to be a little wiser about this. Like, you're just being a punk for no reason. Like, you don't need to tell them this dream. It's not helpful. Right? So I just want to stop there for a second. And it's Mother's Day, but I want to get onto dads a little bit because we need it. Parents, especially dads, are you neglecting to be a parent like Jacob does here over and over and over again? It's so easy to do, especially in our culture where we still kind of hug the line of where moms stay at home and take care of the children and dad work and provide the money in order for the household, and so they're just passive in the corner. Dads, are you holding up your responsibility, God-given responsibility, to pastor your wives, to pastor your children, to cultivate a home where they can know and love Jesus? Right? That's what you're called to be. That's what you're called to do. Not to just be a passive provider, but to be an intentional, loving pastor of your family. Right? I want to ask you that today. We're going to see there's consequences if you don't here. I'm not saying that those are in a vacuum of if you're the perfect parent, something like this may still happen. Because you can't control the sins of others. Yes, this is a calling to us to be good fathers, to be good parents. But I'm not saying that if you do that, everything will be perfect. It won't. And you will still be sinful and you'll never do it perfectly. But things like this could still happen. But we are called to look at this text and say, where am I broken in this text? And if I'm honest, I work a lot. I come home and I'm there, but I'm not present. I'm just in the house. I'm not active in pastoring my wife. I'm not active in loving my children every single time, right? It's easy to slip into that. And then you realize 10 years down the road, gosh, I just never did that, right? I'm not saying this to heap guilt on you and to say you weren't good enough, whatever, be better, but rather just to say that's a reality that we should be aware of. That one of the biggest epidemics of our time is not necessarily the internet or not necessarily whatever it might be, but it's the lack of godly men who care for their families well. That's one of the biggest issues we have, not just as a nation, not just as Summersville, but the world has, is that we don't have men who uphold this responsibility to be who they're supposed to be. And in turn, we've now, as a culture, shifted a little bit, and now women are in the workplace too. Nothing wrong with that. But you don't lose responsibility either. So that happens now, that we have stay-at-home dads, and moms are off providing, and dads are home taking care of the children. Like, moms, you're on the hook to take care of your kids too. So just keep that in mind, because this text, it just screams it over and over and over again. Verse 12, it says, now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock in Shechem. Always pay attention to locations in the Bible because they matter. And Israel and Joseph said, are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. And he said to him, here I am. So he said to him, now go see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word. So he sent him to the valley of Hebron. So he came to Shechem, and a man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, what are you seeking? I am seeking my brothers, he said. Tell me where they are pasturing the flock. And the man said, they have gone away, for I have heard them say, let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. Right? This is kind of a funny scene to me. This is the way my brain works, which probably says more about me than anything else. But here comes Joseph in this long, flowing, colorful robe, looking like some rap star or something. And he's lost in this field. He's like, where do I go? Where are my brothers? And this random guy sees him just like wandering around in the field in this like flowy, I don't know. I think that's funny. But he's just like lost out here in the middle wearing this fancy robe. And the guy's like, I've got to help him or he's going to die out here. Poor little Joseph. And so he points him to his brothers. And don't forget, like I said, what happened in Shechem, right? He's going to find his brothers in Shechem. Well, don't forget, his brothers have been to Shechem before. Don't forget that reality, right? So this is Moses, the author, giving some unwritten context, tipping his hat, showing these boys have a capacity of violence. Right? We almost see what happens here before they even get there. These boys could do this again in the same place, and they do. Right? So that's one kind of a good, helpful Bible study tip, is that like when, especially in Genesis, when locations matter, like when they use the word Egypt, something bad's coming. When they use the word Shechem, something bad's coming. Right? It almost helps tell the story without blatantly saying it. So verse 18, they saw him from afar, and before he came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what becomes of his dreams. So you can just feel just the hate in the words that they say, right? Not only do they want to murder him, but now they're coming up with a plan to make their want a reality, right? They see Joseph out in the field, and they think to themselves, here comes Daddy's little princess in a special tunic. We're going to kill him. No more playing games, no more cold shoulder. We're just going to do away. This has gone on for too long. We're going to, like our great on down the line grandfather Cain, or Uncle Cain, and like our Uncle Esau, we're going to murder our little brother. Right? See how these things stack up to show the human heart? They always reference back to something back in Genesis to show where it comes from. Do you remember what Cain did? Cain was mad at his brother because God accepted his sacrifice. He accepted Abel's sacrifice, not Cain's, and he's jealous because he wants the power, he wants the recognition. And the same exact thing, this is what these brothers do, right? That's the human heart, right? On display over and over and over. Right? Same thing, that's what Esau, that's why Esau's mad. It's because he wants his father's approval and doesn't get it. But luckily, his brother Reuben steps in before they kill him. It says, verse 21. Let me make sure I'm right here. Verse 21. But when Reuben heard it, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, let us not take his life. And Reuben said to them, shed no blood. Throw him into the pits here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hands to restore him to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many collars that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. And the pit was empty, there was no water in it. Right? It seems like kind of a random sentence. The pit was empty, there was no water in it. But these were kind of like cisterns that they put out to collect rainwater or whatever for the fields, so they could easily had access to water as they were, caring for the livestock. So these are like cisterns, but they're saying they didn't throw him in to drown. He wasn't just it was just an empty pit, right? So that kind of helps with the context a little bit. It's not just this random hole that they found in the middle of the field, but it had a purpose. And they're like, all right, let's just use what's around us in order to do it. And at first glance, Reuben looks like a good guy. Like he has all good intentions here. He's going to save his brother out of the pit, right? He's going to give his brothers a story. I don't think so. I don't think that Reuben's being a good guy here. I think it's also just self-preservation. Here's why. Remember, like I said earlier, I think Reuben wants to set this whole situation up so he can look like a hero to get back in the good graces of his father because he just slept with his stepmom in order to kind of this power play. So I think what Reuben's saying here is I'm going to save him just to make myself look better. Right? This isn't good intention on Reuben's part. He's just trying to take advantage of the brother's anger in order to make himself look good. And I guess after this, he kind of wanders off. I don't know if he's frustrated with the situation, trying to figure out what to do, and they wander off. Also, another thing, I actually thought of this morning. When you think of this situation, how old are these guys? I think of like a 15-year-old being bullied, like a freshman in high school being bullied by seniors. That's kind of like the image that comes into my head, and they're pushing him around and whatever. But think Reuben's probably in his mid-30s. Like, he's not a young man, right? Sin makes us so childish, doesn't it? It makes us do things that we would never imagine that we would do since we were kids. And the next thing you know, you're entrenched in this thing that you would almost line up as something that kids do, like affairs, like pornography. Like, it's childish stuff that our heart tells me, I need this. It's gossip. It's almost this kiddie stuff that sin says, I want what I want. And that's what we see going on here is this 35-year-old man throws his brother in a pit in order to impress his dad. It's almost like, what in the world is going on here? All right, so they take their brother, these grown men take their brother, strip him down, and throw him into this cistern. And Reuben wanders off. Verse 25. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah, and pay attention, Judah is actually just the Hebrew name. Judah and Judas are the same name. Judas is just the Greek version of the name Judah. And so when you hear that name, I didn't really know that. I was reminded of it this week, but keep that in mind because it matters. Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. And his brother listened to them. The Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took Joseph to Egypt. Hey, just look how callous these brothers are, right? They've just thrown their brother into a cistern to die, I guess is what I assume. You know, these brothers think. Reuben has this kind of backhanded plan that he's going to save him, but I guess they were just going to leave him in there and starve. So they throw him into this pit in order to figure out what to do with him, maybe. And we don't see this here, but chapter 42:21, which isn't up here, says that Joseph is pleading with them. Right? That gives a little bit of color to this image here. He's not just sitting there quietly. They're like, I love you guys. Save me. Please don't do this. And what do? They sit down and eat a meal. Right? That's what happens in our hearts with sin. Right? We get to the point where it's just, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I don't care what the consequences are. I don't care how it makes other people feel. I don't care what it means. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. We just get this calloused, I'm going to use these words, and I don't care how they land on you. I don't care about what it means to you. Man, I don't know about you, but I feel that in my heart. That's what sin does to me. I just become numb to any consequences. I'm just, whatever. It's almost this wave that goes over you. I don't know if anybody else knows what I'm talking about. It's just like, I'm just going to do it. I don't care anymore what happens. I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. I don't know if anybody else knows the feeling I'm talking about there, but I think that's what's going on with these brothers. And then Judah, which is Judas, comes up with this great idea. He said, instead of killing our brother, let's sell him out. Let's sell him for 20 shekels, which, we don't know how much that is, but the historians would have said that's how much a slave cost, right? He didn't get an extra penny more than what just a regular old slave. Right? The brother, to show us, he meant nothing. Joseph meant nothing to him. He's just another slave, right? And so Reuben must have wandered off, because look how he reacts, verse 29. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where shall I go?" Right? You can see, his intention doesn't matter so much about Joseph, it's on himself. Now let's reflect back again to the story of Dinah. How does Jacob react after the brothers murder an entire city? He says, how's this going to look for me? How's my reputation going to be whenever the surrounding towns find out about what you guys have done, right? In the same way, just like Jacob didn't care about Dinah, Reuben doesn't really care about Joseph. He just cares about the reputation that comes out of it. How many times do we, in the same way, do things that seem good just so that we can uphold reputation in order to make ourselves look better? We don't actually really care about the good thing that we're doing. We just want to look good because we did it. Man, you see just the human heart on display in this passage. Verse 31. Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to the father and said, "We have this we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not." And he identified it and said, "It is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without torn to pieces." I don't know about you, but when I read this, doesn't it sound like another story that Jacob did not that long ago? Right? Jacob got Jacob. Or if you remember, Jacob, what does he do? He takes his brother's clothes into his father in order to, trick him into getting a blessing. And his brothers just do the exact same thing. Well, let's take our robe into our father in order to trick him, in order maybe we can get some of what he has now. The boys have finally got to the person that they are actually mad at. I'll say that again. The boys finally as they hand them this robe, they finally are talking face to face with the person that they actually have a problem with. They don't hate Jacob. Jacob's just Jacob. They don't hate Joseph. He's just a reflection of the outcome of what happens to the person they actually hate. They actually hate Jacob. They love Jacob and they desire his approval and his blessing. He doesn't give it. They don't actually hate this coat. They're mad at their dad. They want his approval, right? If he would have never shown favorites, they would have never acted this way, right? We can see the whole picture kind of coming together. What they really hated was Jacob and his favoritism, this father, right? Verse 34, let's finish up this chapter. Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and all his daughters rose up to confront him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him to Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of guard. Right? So while we're hard on Jacob, put yourself with him in this moment. His son has just died. Right? Not just his son, but the son of his late wife, the one he loved the most. Right? So as his son dies, I'm sure he has these memories just flooding of his wife. It's like, I just miss Rebecca. It's like, this sucks. Like, I love her. I haven't loved anybody like I loved her until Joseph. And now he's gone too. Like, you can feel that pain that he feels there a little bit. So this kind of sets the scene for the rest of the book of Genesis. That Joseph has been sold into slavery. He's on his way to Egypt to work for Potiphar. And this is the scene by which we'll follow the rest of the book. So why does this matter to our lives? Right? Why is this story about this young, kid who is preferred by his father and gets sold into slavery? What does it matter, right? As I've alluded to, right? In this story, we see failure after failure in the family of sin, right? Right? We see a passivity of the father. We see arrogance and immaturity of Joseph. Right? We see the way sin heaps up and gets to us without us even knowing it. And I pray that through this, we all see a reflection of ourselves at some level in our sinfulness and ways that we connect with this. But I want us to cut a little bit deeper than that too. That what we see in this text, as I talked about last week, is not just a glimpse, but it's a clear, screaming reflection of how God is going to deal with this sin that we see on full display in the family of Joseph and Jacob. Right? And this is Jesus. Stay with me because this blows my mind. And I hope it does yours too. God, like Jacob, will send his son into the world, just like Jacob sends his son into the field, for their well-being, in order to check on their well-being of his brothers. Right? God, our Father, will send Jesus from heaven down to earth for the well-being of us. Right? And they will not love him. They will hate him. Right? God sends Jesus into the world. He comes to save his people. And what do? They hate him. They take him, Judas, sells him out, not for 20 shekels, but for 30 pieces of silver, sells him into slavery. And what do they do then? They take him, they beat him, they mock him, they put a long, expensive robe over his shoulders, covered in the blood of a sacrifice. They hang him up on a cross and they murder him. Right? And in that murdering, he goes into a pit, into a tomb. He goes into this tomb. And what happens next? He gets delivered from the tomb. Just like Joseph, right? I want to show my hand like you guys don't know what happens, right? Joseph goes to Egypt, becomes this high of praise, and saves his family. In the same way, Jesus is going to come out of the tomb, out of death, to new life in order to give us life, right? And just like Joseph's dream, that everyone would bow down to him because of who he is, everyone will bow down to Christ because he is the infinite God of the universe, right? It points us to verses like Philippians 2, 9 through 11, which says, "Therefore, God has highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name that is above every name, so that the name of Jesus every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and the other earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father." Right? That's the central message of this text. Yes, we see broken people. Yes, we can say we shouldn't be like them. But we say, how do we fix it? How do we fix the problem that is our families? How do we fix the problem that is our sin? And the answer is Jesus. The answer is the only way that we can come to have peace with what we've done in the past as failures. And the only way that we can move forward and actually show this message to the world is through the finished work of Jesus. What we need is the gospel. I don't know about you, but as a parent and as a friend and as a pastor, I constantly beat myself up. I just haven't done enough. I'm taking these opportunities that God has given me and train wrecking them. Anybody else ever feel that? I do. But here's the beauty. What this church needs, what your kids need, what you need is not perfect parents, is not a perfect pastor. What they have is a perfect Savior. A Savior who did all those things for them so that he can save us from the depth of our sin. Right? And he doesn't just fix the mess, he enters into the mess in order to give us life, right? I want to go back to that water bottle analogy from the beginning, right? My life is just sin after sin after sin after sin after mess up, and it's shaken up, and it's at some point you can't say these are my problems. Every part of me is sinful, right? You've heard me in here use the term totally depraved, right? That doesn't mean you're as sinful as you could be. That means every part of you is sinful. Everything that you do, every feeling that you feel has this ability to be twisted in the wrong direction because of our sin. I'm just a mess. I'm just this bottle of water that's jacked up, and I'm born that way. It's not clean water and I jack it up. I'm born and it's nasty, dirty, brown water that can't be fixed. And what does Jesus do? He doesn't necessarily just throw the bottle in the trash. Instead, he says, I consider this bottle clean. Because Jesus, I'm using the same analogy here, Jesus is perfect. Jesus is sinless. Jesus came and died in our place so that we can have life. God doesn't just say, all right, be clean, now you'll never sin again. Instead, he enters into the messiness of our lives in order to show his love and grace. It's more beautiful than if he were just to fix everything. He gets to be a part of it. He gets to use dirty, broken water in order to give his perfect, clean water to a broken world. Right? That's the beautiful image that we have here. So I want to end by just talking about forgiveness slightly, because oftentimes forgiveness is one of the hardest things that we can do. And maybe that's, for Mother's Day, one of the hardest things you can do. You think back to your parents and the way you grew up, and it's just, this is devastating. But oftentimes, we link forgiveness to, well, if they'll show me they're sorry enough, then I'll forgive them. Well, if they can truly make up for it, then I'll forgive them. If they'll make an effort, then I'll make an effort. That's not what Jesus does. That's not godly forgiveness. What Jesus says is, I consider the bottle clean even though it's not. That's what forgiveness is going to have to look like in our lives and with our families. Not that the bottle is clean. It's not. It's never going to be perfect. You're never going to perfectly figure out the issue. You're just going to have to look upon somebody, the whole picture. They've done this, everything is messed up. And what do? Just like Jesus, we consider it clean. Nothing attached. Nothing for them to do to make it up to you. Nothing for them to consider more. We just consider them clean because I have done nothing. I am sinful. Christ forgives me of infinite eternal wrath on the basis of Jesus. I can forgive anybody, anything, because of that reality. I'm not saying be wise and be unwise and go to people that have hurt you and you know that they're going to hurt you again, but I'm saying forgive them. I'm not saying you have to be best friends all the time, but you can consider them forgiven.